Fidelity.com. It's like Salesforce. It's just a free one, which is why I like that. Next, you have your network. And this rotates between 200 and 250 people. And what I mean by it rotates is that when I was in the travel business for 10 years, I had a lot of people who were in my network who were in the travel industry. I'm not in that industry anymore, so they've bumped up to my database, or they kind of gone to maybe this next thing, which is acquaintances. But I'm more talking about this from a technology perspective. Next, I have my inner circle. This is about 40 or 50 people. What I do with my inner circle is these are people who I reach out to on occasions and say, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, Z in my business or my life. What are your opinions about this? One of the things I've done with my inner circle is I work alone. You all have the gift of HR departments. I don't have that. I just talk to myself. And so what I did a couple years ago was I went to surveymonkey.com. And I sent out a survey to about 50 people and said, I talked to you about my work. Can you give me some feedback? And I gave them a forum to give me anonymous feedback. Because over a glass of wine or over a meal, they're not going to necessarily tell you something that they'd like to tell you because they don't want to hurt your feelings, blah, blah, blah. I looked for the pattern in this, and actually the pattern was very interesting. At the end of that, there were 3 or 4 people who said, Diane, you grew up in the academic world. I lived in Asia. I lived in Colorado. You're now on the East Coast. You've got to take your dress up a notch. You need to get some dark suits that just fit in with the whole business community. And right around the same time, I did a presentation for Fidelity, and I asked for any feedback. And it happened to be the presentation had been 2 weeks before. And a guy wrote me back, and he says, we loved it. Your suit was just too arty for us. And I really thought I would never get any work with Fidelity again, but I can change my suit. Am I going to change my suit, or am I going to change my content? I mean, how difficult, again, am I going to be to work with? But that inner circle gave me a forum. And you might want to try this on occasions if you're vying for a promotion, if you're trying to do something like getting into a program like this. The next one is what I call my PBA. This is my personal board of advisors. My personal board of advisors. 4 to 5 people. These are people who I go to and say, you know what? Maybe I don't want to own my business anymore. Maybe I should go work for a company. Or here's an opportunity that's the biggest opportunity I've ever thought I want to go after. Will you coach me? Will you mentor me? And how I can get this big account. I've never done something like this before. My books are now in 7 languages. I'm trying to find some speaking opportunities outside the United States. I don't speak these languages, and I'm not going to learn the languages. But part of it is how can I take effective networking globally? What are some different things I should think about? What's intellectual property issues? So this is a group of people who I can go and say those things to. And last is what I call your FFF, your friends, family, and fools. These are people who just like you because they like you or they have to. But these are people, in many cases, we turn into our therapist, our career counselor, our all kinds of other things. And in many cases, just let them be your friend. Let them be your fun person. And have some other people up the food chain who can really help you out with some of the tougher things. Over and over and over again, I get the call from somebody saying, my husband or my wife is a bad networker, and I'm tired of talking about it over dinner. Can you help them? They want to be able just to be the spouse. They want to have the date night out. So this gives you a little bit of an idea on, kind of how it goes and how it flows.
Yeah. Is it safe to say you take your database, do you take from your LinkedIn and plug it into your database?
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. So I take and I tag everything. So I download, the question was, do I take my LinkedIn database and how do I bring that in? So I bring in my LinkedIn, I bring my Facebook, and this is one of the things that's tough, is you do not want to have a zillion floating databases. It's kind of annoying. And I've also learned from my LinkedIn network is because I bring them into this, and then what happens is about once a month or so, I send out an email newsletter with some information. How to be an introvert and be a good networker. Or how to take, when there's a serendipitous opportunity, how do you run with it? A year and a half ago, I was at a conference, and this little thing went running by me, and I turned around to see what it was, and it was Dr. Ruth. And I was like, this is just too funny. So I actually snagged her, and I said, can I interview you about what networking is like from Dr. Ruth's perspective? You're pretty good at people skills. She's a former sharpshooter from the Israeli army. I mean, she's just a ticket and a half. And so I went to New York, and I visited her, and we had a cup of coffee in this wonderful little cafe in New York. What a great opportunity. I mean, she's just turned 80. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of those opportunities. So in some cases, I did a whole write-up about, Dr. Ruth's advice on networking. That had one of the biggest open rates I've ever had on my newsletter, and a picture of Dr. Ruth and I. I mean, she came up to here. I'm 5'3½". So it would have been so fun to have a basketball player on the other side of her and see where that went. But so in many cases, it was kind of like that sort of a thing. In some cases, people say, Diane, I work for a company and my emails get filtered. Can I go on can I give you my Gmail account? And you want to be mindful about my database. I have 2 email fields. My emails are not rocket, they're not time sensitive. I mean, and they're not crucial to your job. My email is an information thing that you can get at your Gmail or your Yahoo or whatever it is. So a lot of this is learning how to manage this and how to put some time into it. But I have this sort of touch point that I try and do every so often, and it's a great thing to do. Good question. Any other questions before I kind of move on with the handwritten notes? I will share with you that if you want to write a handwritten note, I would say 1 to 2 times in the relationship is probably going to be a golden ticket. Whenever you sit down with some of these senior executives, you can send an email because it shows you're prompt. It shows you're efficient. If you send them a handwritten note, they get that in the mail the next day, and they're like, my gosh, not only is this person prompt and efficient, they have amazing manners. And this, again, will separate you. This will lift you up above everybody else. So in many cases, 45 cents, 46 cents? I don't even know what it costs anymore. But I have a little thing in my bag at all times. It has stamps in it, notes in it, a pen in it. So at any time I can leave something, I can actually write the note in the lobby of the car. And it's in the mail, it's done. And they're like, wow. I mean, so it's a kind of a 1-2 pal. And it really will separate you. When you go look at your email box tonight, how many of that and how many handwritten notes do you have in your inbox? Those are the people who can really, in many cases, make quite a difference. Yeah. 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 No, and it's there you go. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. You keep it. The other thing it does is it stops thank you ping pong. Thank you for your thank you. Thank you for your thank you. Thank you for your thank you. And you get into, and then somebody has to pull the plug. And it's really, really kind of ridiculous. Whereas, no one sends you a handwritten note saying thank you for your thank you note. So in many cases, again, I think it just shows an incredible amount of class and, and sophistication of someone. And my first book is dedicated to 3 people. It's dedicated to my mom. It's dedicated to my 2 mentors. And the third one, it's dedicated to an 8-year-old boy who wrote me a handwritten thank you note after we came back from a vacation to the Galapagos, my sister's nephew. And I was just so amazed that he had he drew dolphins and he drew this whole thing. And the mom said, I didn't ask him to do it. He came back from the trip and he says, I want to write Diane a note. And so in many cases, it's just, it stands out. It doesn't mean that, men should do it or women shouldn't do it, vice versa. It just, you stand out either way. Yeah. Any other questions? I want to talk just slightly about gender and networking and some of those fun things about, not quite an etiquette sort of a thing, but just a couple things on how you can speak man and speak woman. Any other questions about kind of what? Okay. So, men, hunt. Few words, to the point. Women, we want to have all the different options before we just make up our mind. You want to be a little bit mindful when you're networking one way or the other. And this does not mean that all men are this way or all women this way. It's kind of like, are all men taller than all women? No. But are men generally taller than women? Yes. So kind of a general thing is you want to have when you're dealing with men. When I ask men about their business, they give me the sales numbers. They give me the figures right away. They know all of the stats. When I ask women about the business, what do they solve? What's the culture like? So you want to just be a little bit mindful about when you're talking to one or the other, having a little bit of a dialogue and being prepared to speak in that language. A body language thing I learned a couple years ago over Thanksgiving. I was with some friends, and my friend said, you know what, Diane, I've been meaning to thank you. He was running a technology team before, and now he was running marketing. So before he was dealing with more men than he was dealing with women. And he says, you're the one who explained to me that when women are nodding their head, it means they're listening. When men nod their head, it means they agree.